Welcome back to the Liminal Pines. It's that time again. I've completed yet another sketchbook. That's right, another one. Now, in the past, I would have made a sketchbook tour where I slowly flipped page by page to show every drawing one by one. But I want to try something different with this sketchbook tour. You see, for me, a sketchbook isn't just about the drawings. It's not about making finished pieces. It's not about perfection. For me, a sketchbook is about learning. And in this particular sketchbook, I focused on 3 areas for improvement: environments, facial expressions, and perspective. We're going to take a non-chronological look at groups of sketches that illustrate each of these themes, showcasing what exactly I learned along the way. Now, the first thing that catches my eye when flipping through this sketchbook is the sheer amount of environmental thumbnail sketches. These were in part achieved by using these neat little thumbnail cards that I made. With these thumbnail sketches, my biggest concern was organizing my values, or in other words, where my lights and darks were. This is important because of how values create clarity in a piece. A lack of balance can lead to an incomprehensible mess. And on the subject of values, we have to talk about the intentional use of negative space. I used to think that an artist could create a compelling subject on the merit of the subject, which can certainly be true, but I've learned that the empty space surrounding the subject can be just as important, allowing you to create a plethora of compelling visual shapes. This is especially important when you're working in black and white, pen and ink, like I do. But what do these principles serve to accomplish? The end goal with any thumbnail I draw is to create a compelling composition. This requires a degree of knowledge on things like focal points, designing your lights and darks in a way that naturally guides the eye, creating a visual flow that in turn tells a compelling story. Of all the environmental thumbnails in this sketchbook, there are 2 where I feel like I succeeded in organizing my values and negative spaces to craft interesting compositions. The first is of a lone figure standing in the middle of a tree grove. The repeating motif of the trees is satisfying and parallels the character in center frame. The second is of this set of stairs descending into the water. I'm most proud of how I rendered the steps with vertical hatching, using the negative space to show plane changes. You'll hear me talk about composition often. I study it all the time, and here is the book that I use most often. My goal with learning all of these fundamental principles is so that I can draw in entirety my original comic in circles. At the end of the day, I want my drawings to tell silent stories of their own. Another tried and true method of telling nonverbal stories is through characters, or more specifically, the facial expressions those characters make. A key factor to capturing human emotion is by observing how the face squashes and stretches. For example, the hallmarks of an angry expression are compressed, downturned eyebrows, and squinted eyes. In fact, a lot of emotion can be discerned through the eyes and eyebrows alone. On this page here, I studied the eyes of anger. Though keep in mind that nuances in emotion come from a wide variety of other elements, from body language to even the position of the camera. There's that idea of composition rearing its head again. Besides the physical mechanisms of the face, proportions of said features also play a significant role. By playing around with, for example, the size of a character's mouth, you can emphasize emotions like joy or sadness. To push it even further, we can exaggerate elements such as the focal point of the camera lens itself to achieve a certain mood, or even exaggerate the shape of the head, moving closer to caricature and giving us a better idea of the character beyond their expressions. Although not very expressive, this is my favorite portrait I drew in this sketchbook. I feel like I was able to capture this slight melancholy in the expression of this character, who you might recognize from the video game The Last Guardian. And now for the technical portion of the sketchbook tour, where I talk about perspective. A deep understanding of perspective can create both believable environments and characters that inhabit them. I personally find perspective to be very, very, very difficult, which is why I try to practice it whenever I am drawing. Starting broadly, it's important to know where your horizon line is located on your picture plane. This seems rather simple, but this line will allow you to reference if you are seeing the top or bottom plane of an object. Also, keep in mind that objects that are are very, very, very far away from your picture plane are going to appear to flatten, and the detail will decrease. This is what we call atmospheric perspective. And horizon lines also allow you to place your characters into a three-dimensional space. For example, the top of this subject's feet are visible because they are located below the horizon line. Also, subjects who extend into the background will appear to visually compress. This is called foreshortening. Check out how in this plein air sketch, the backside of the stool shrinks, emphasizing its existence in a three-dimensional space. And this also applies to characters. See how in this skull study, the right eye appears smaller and squashed because we're looking at it in a 3/4 view. By adhering to the rules of perspective, you can give your characters form. And furthermore, in order to push myself in this sketchbook, I tried to dabble in 3 and 4 point perspective. Now, 3-point perspective is very useful when trying to demonstrate the height of a subject, which is very pertinent for things like structures. In regards to the frame that we're viewing the subject through, it would be located very close to the subject. And as I mentioned earlier, if you add another point, you can unlock an interesting fisheye lens in which to draw your characters. It's here where foreshortening is greatly exaggerated. And of course, perspective can also inform your composition. Tops of towers can round with their height, and building corners can triangulate across the skyline. Shapes reign king. And that leads me to the final page of the sketchbook, where I tried to combine all of the elements I was studying in one self-portrait. While not perfect, I feel like I learned quite a bit while drawing it. To conclude this tour, I just want to state again how sketchbooks are not a place for works of perfection. I hope my output here illustrates that, because there are some seriously awful drawings in here. But to me, that doesn't matter. What does matter is that I engaged with the process of drawing, and that I was willing to learn from my mistakes. I also highly encourage those watching to set goals for your own sketchbooks. All too often, you'll find yourself struggling trying to figure out what exactly to draw, and simply writing down your goals on the first page will give you something to reference whenever you don't know what exactly to draw. Because of the structure, I now feel more confident in my ability to depict environments and characters in a way I find aesthetically and technically pleasing. Thank you for watching this video. If you would like to see my progress over time as an artist, please go ahead and check out the playlist of sketchbook tours I have on my channel. I've only been drawing seriously now for a little under 2 years. Completely self-taught, mind you. And I feel myself getting better and better each and every day. And hopefully because of this sketchbook tour, you can see that comes through consistency and not through striving for perfection. I really don't have anything else to say. Good night.